what we wanted to put across in the reentry of John Glenn's capsule was the sheer violence of that event, with flames and chunks of this retro pack breaking off and falling away. We achieved the reentry effects by two different means, one of them being the use of liquid nitrogen. The liquid nitrogen would spew out from around the rim of the capsule and out of several nozzles within the retro pack, and that would be blown backwards away from the direction of travel of the capsule to create the sense of this in a violent airstream. And then that white liquid nitrogen was backlit with orange gels, that is, orange filters over all of the light sources, so as to make everything that appeared to be white nitrogen now red nitrogen. In the X-1A sequence, we had to create the illusion that the plane became uncorked at around Mach 2.5. That is, it went into an erratic spin from which Yeager barely recovered. The close-ups of that spin that would give the editors something that they could cut with was shot almost exclusively indoors in the studio, with the plane mounted on a spinning device that allowed us to rotate it around in front of a painting that was also spinning in the background, with liquid nitrogen being pumped through the scene. Doing the special effects for the right stuff, we discovered that there's no such thing as a standard technique. We felt that what counted was to try to serve the director's vision. And we had to be willing to try any and everything, as ridiculous as some of those techniques were, to achieve that. We had to throw out a lot of preconceptions, and I suppose in this kind of work the only limit is one's ingenuity and the budget.
Special effects can be used to create a world that doesn't exist, but nevertheless seems to be real. In the film Blade Runner, artists produced a surprisingly convincing vision of Los Angeles in the 21st century.
Starting with the script, Ridley Scott, the director of Blade Runner, asked me to design the vehicle ideas for the film. We started off immediately with the spinner, the most difficult one to build. It became a classic industrial design exercise in sequence, starting with concept sketches for shape, refining those to specific details for a vehicle, an actual vehicle, organizing the mechanical detail systems, which made it look like it actually flew. It was an internal lift idea called an aerodyne. The detailed sketches were then done after the concept was finalized in the form of gouache sketches. The interior idea, the overall vehicle design, and then the finished concept was handed over to the production designer, Larry Paul, and his staff, and the special effects people who actually built the fixtures. Working as a concept designer for a film like Blade Runner was to invent a concise alternate reality, which was the director's vision, translated through real sociological and technological parameters that we developed by discussion. We very seriously took a sociological idea coupled with technology and imagined that buildings would go up in height. Current buildings are about 1,300 feet, and we envisioned 3,000-foot buildings. That puts into play a whole series of construction ideas, such as elevated roadways, huge access pyramids up to the towers that are the buildings themselves. And for the particular reality that we were creating for Blade Runner, we wanted a sort of moody, almost a oppressive technological atmosphere.
Science fiction films like Blade Runner provide plausible visions of the future based on sound sociological projections. These previews of possible future societies can both instruct and forewarn. Futurists like Sid Mead study the leading edge of today's technology and try to imagine where these technological breakthroughs will lead us in the future.
We are riding on this little planet around the sun, hurtling through space towards some unknown point, and how we get there and in what kind of style and in what kind of mental and spiritual and emotional state is purely dependent on ourselves. We have nobody else to depend on, or to blame for that matter, than our own averaged intelligence.
The first transport is away. The first transport is away.
Spectacular action. Great to look at. You may not be aware that it sounds terrific too. Listen carefully for a minute. You are hearing a state-of-the-art movie soundtrack. Dense, richly textured, with a powerful effect on your emotions. Sound effects play a surprisingly large role in the experience of a movie. They add texture and reality to every scene. At Hollywood's Nyman Tiller Associates, matching footsteps is one of the many tricks in a repertoire of movie sound magic. On the Foley stage, natural sounds are created by an artist called a Foley walker. The Foley walker must have the skill and timing of a dancer as he matches sounds simultaneously to the picture. Sound effects like these are commonly added to a movie after it has been shot. This allows the mixer to isolate the separate sound elements and enhance their quality. Building the sound design for a film is a complex endeavor. Some movies have nearly 100 separate soundtracks. Today, electronics and computers assist in this process on many levels. At Nyman Tiller, one major innovation is the access system. Thousands of sound effects have been stored on a magnetic disc. This computerized system replaces the traditional method of sound editing, which requires rooms full of editors and stacks of magnetic soundtracks. Long hours have to be spent searching for and retrieving all the separate sound effects from various reels of tape. With the aid of a computer, however, the access operator is able to immediately retrieve the sound he wants from the magnetic disc. Matching the sound effects to the picture is a fascinating process of trial and error. The mixer will hunt about for a sound effect, natural or artificial, that seems to work best. Then he may alter that sound by changing the pitch or equalization. As in traditional sound work, the judgment and skill of the individual is still the crucial element.
The good thing about this system is that you can manipulate the sound, you can change the pitch, you can make it run almost forever to infinity so that you have the opportunity to stretch sounds and make them fit the picture more than you can conventionally. For example, if you call a helicopter now, this is just the raw sound, the actual length of the sound that runs. Now that actual sound runs 3 seconds and 25 frames, which is not very long. I can take the same sound and now I can make it run forever, or loop it so that it'll just keep coming around again. So now the sound is running and it will just keep repeating and repeating, but it's a noiseless repeat. You don't hear it repeat or anything. So I can take it and slow the pitch down, speed it up, change the pitch. So what I can actually do is start it off at a very slow, just the blades turning. Then by increasing the pitch, I can make it take off. And then fly it away, take it away out of disappearing off around the mountain or whatever. And then it can come back in. Hover for a second, slow down. And stop. So that's all from 3 seconds and 25 frames of sound. That's one of the advantages of this machine.
But whether or not computers are used, the first step in any sound editing process is to collect a library of sound effects. Sound effects artist Frank Serafini regularly travels about the Los Angeles area collecting sounds for the feature films and television commercials he works on. Sometimes, natural sounds recorded in the field like this will later be altered, slowed down, or speeded up, or even run backwards to create unusual effects. At other times, these natural sounds will be combined with each other or set to completely different visual images to create artificial effects that can seem more real than the authentic sound itself. Each of the many separate sound effects elements of a film will eventually be orchestrated into a whole effect score, just as precisely as any composer would arrange a musical score.
The creating process starts with understanding how a sound relates with a particular visual effect and understanding the characteristics and the amplitude of the sound. In most cases, I take sound and create a natural, organic effect, and then if it needs to be taken further or expanded, I'll add a synthesized sound effect or process it with digital delays and electronic signal processing equipment. There's several different things that can happen to a sound. The sound can be sampled into a digital synthesizer, which takes the sound and stores it into numbers, computer information. And then you can manipulate the sound whichever way you want to. You can loop it, you can sustain the sound, you can turn it backwards. The emulator digital synthesizer is a keyboard that allows you to do these types of functions. You can take a voice, for instance. This is digital sound. This is digital sound. That is my voice stored in digital memory into this computer here. This is digital sound. Then I can take that sound and this is digital sound. This is digital sound, digital sound, digital sound, digital sound, and manipulate it anywhere. This is digital sound. 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 That sound can be taken backwards. And turn back again. This is digital sound. This is digital sound. Digital sound. Digital sound. So this process of analog to digital conversion is a very powerful tool in creating special sound effects. For instance, on Tron, this became very handy in creating the disc throw sounds. We took monkey screams from the San Diego Zoo and we processed them into a Fairlight digital synthesizer, and also a bullwhip, cutting through air. We took those two elements and we were able to actually perform the discs as they were being thrown. In creating the cycle sound in the Suzuki commercial, that was a challenge to make this motorcycle feel as though it were riding in a world of grid lines and computer animation. What excites me the most about working with the technology and sound is the ability to create sound effects and music that had never been heard before. The possibilities are just endless. It's fantastic.
The sounds of the future have arrived. Today's consumer technologies are bringing these innovations in sound to almost everyone, almost everywhere. But these are just some of the visible signs of a revolutionary new phase in entertainment technology. The amazing power of the computer is expanding our concept of special effects and making possible a whole new form of visual entertainment. Let's take a look now behind the scenes at some of the computer technologies that are leading us toward the electronic special effects of the future. For millions of kids, video games provide an intense, involving experience, often more compelling than movies or TV. Colorful, action-packed games give the player a sense of power not possible from passive, traditional forms of entertainment. When designing a video game, hundreds of gameplay combinations must be programmed into the computer, along with all of the visual instructions that accompany them. The look and complexity of the game design is limited only by the amount of this information that can be stored in the computer's memory.
The amount of memory we have today will be very insignificant compared to what will be available to us in 5 or 10 years. And we will see the home video game become much more sophisticated, more detail, more color, more shading. And eventually it will get to the point where you will not be able to distinguish a video synthesized game image from one that's perfectly naturally photographed. The action in the games and the number of levels that the games will interact with your senses will expand. What I've always hoped and dreamed for is that the individual person in their home would eventually create their own television experience.
Many futurists believe the key to the new technologies will be interactivity, the ability for the viewer or player to become involved in the action. One conceivable direction for interactive entertainment is suggested by this remarkable invention, the flight simulator. At Ames Research Lab in California, pilots test hypothetical aircraft in a simulated cockpit. The images viewed through the 6 windows of the cockpit respond immediately to the pilot's command, changing perspective and location as the craft is maneuvered. The pictures the pilot sees are generated in real time by a bank of high-speed computers. In order to reproduce movement which corresponds precisely to the directions of the pilot, the computers must be able to handle millions of instructions per second. As if playing in a giant video game, the pilot learns the consequences of his mistakes safely. As computing power gets cheaper and more available, this type of visual experience may someday become possible in the home. But even the images of this sophisticated flight simulator only hint at the real possibilities of computer-generated imagery. Today, computers have opened up a whole new field for men's visual imagination. TV commercials packed with computer graphics have become a new art form.
A computer is a new tool to the artist. It allows you to see things in ways that have never been seen before. What artists come up with, what visions they have, I don't know. I know that we have a tool now that allows me as a designer to discover things that I did not know I was going to see, that allows me to be surprised. One of the things in the process of finding where visions go is you don't always have like a clear vision of what it is, but it's the process that you're doing that leads you there.
The process begins at a computer terminal with the entry of each outline to be animated. The computer will be instructed to think in terms of basic geometric shapes called primitives. Once the computer has been told what shapes are desired and how they look from various angles, the designer programs in the movements to be animated. To solidify a shape, the designer must literally imitate the effect of light hitting a three-dimensional object as it moves around within the scene. The necessary calculations are far too complex to be carried out in real time. In fact, each frame, a fraction of a second, may take the computer up to several hours to calculate. The millions of bits of information necessary to specify all the shapes and colors on a frame are transferred to tape or disk storage and then read onto film by a laser scanning device. Even with a very powerful computer, a week of calculations may produce less than a minute of finished film. The results, however, often create a fantastic, self-contained visual world.
Many of the television commercials that are most successful today are ones that are like living in a real dream. You know, it does communicate to you subliminally. There will soon be a time that one won't be able to tell reality from a computer-simulated picture. Computer simulation is a fantastic new tool that allows people to express themselves so clearly and so accurately, more accurately than we have before. And we can apply as much natural physical information to those pictures as we want. You know, we can apply the force of wind or, you know, gravity or heat to the pictures. You can, you know, apply natural physical phenomena to the simulation of those pictures. So it's just getting closer to making films that have a new reality.
Special effects in the movies of the future will increasingly rely on the dazzling three-dimensional imagery of computer animation as electronic effects open the doors to new visual worlds. Today's technology has developed to the point where anything that can be imagined can be filmed. For special effects artists, these new technologies are powerful tools that can bring our dreams to life. No one knows what dreams the future may hold. We can only guess that our unlimited imagination will take us on ever more incredible journeys.